And I'm going to introduce you to the class. This is Jared Soares. This class is not set up the best for great interaction because do me a favor. Can you take your screens and do this? So it's a better experience for Jared if you can see humans on the other end of the call. We like humans. That's why we do the work. So, yeah, I'm just going to get out of your way. So this is Jared. I've known Jared since I believe it was the first image deconstructed workshop that was in Durham, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like you at UNC Chapel Hill.
Yeah, not yeah, it's Chapel Hill, not Durham.
Yeah, which feels like such a long time ago.
Someone was just posting about it like today on Facebook. Some pictures that are a decade ago.
Wow. Please do
So,
not remind me how long time has passed.
so I want to get out of Jared's way, but Jared is an independent photographer based out of Washington, D.C. And he is he's going to talk a little bit about his own work, but also some of the work that he does in the field in terms of I think advocacy for independent photographers. I actually was just talking to Tara Pixley by text just a little bit ago. Who I think I don't know that you work that much. Do you work a lot with Tara to an extent, or
Um,
you
she's
have
with
similar
like
interests?
she's with like Authority Collective, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I think like we've maybe been on some email threads, but like haven't worked directly. But yeah, I've met her in passing before.
Okay. So, Jared, I'm just going to let you. I'm going to go ahead and dim the lights here a little bit and let you kind of go and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. Um just to give everyone kind of a like backstory. So I started out as a newspaper photographer in 2007, and then kind of quickly figured out that there's kind of a ceiling to working in a newspaper. And I had like interests that were um, kind of beyond journalism, beyond that approach to storytelling. And after I left the Roanoke Times, I decided to go freelance. Um, and now I'm working with like magazines, brands, and trying to photograph things that interest me and things that I think are important. Um, and I feel like for today, I'm kind of curious how I can be helpful, to you guys. So I thought this could be more of kind of like a conversation, in terms of, what, I can give you kind of an overview of like what it's like, um, in the world right now for working independently. So yeah, I just thought I would kind of open it up to like any types of questions that anyone might have.
What degree of work do you do that's commercial versus editorial? Or are you pretty much on the editorial camp, or do you do commercial work in addition to that with
So I
more than
think
one?
like um the way I like to describe this is that like I take the same approach that I would for say a New York Times assignment that I would for something with Airbnb, and also how I would work on like a self-initiated project, so like personal work. Um, the the joke is that there's just more people behind me. So if I work for Airbnb or like with a brand, there's typically like an art director, a bigger crew, a stylist, makeup, paid talent. But the idea is to make it feel um, like authentic and like unforced. So I would say it's probably a third editorial, a third commercial, and then a third like personal work.
Talk to me about your personal work.
So at the moment, yeah, I'm interested in using like athletics, so like soccer, specifically to talk about other things. So I can share my screen, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See if I can just like find this real quick. So I grew up playing soccer and have wanted to figure out ways, to use sports to talk about other issues. In particular, this started with see if I can like bring this up here. So can everybody see that?
Yes.
So
That looks good.
when I first moved to DC, I was interested in this summer basketball league called the George Goodman League. It's a league that it's the longest running summer basketball league in the United States. Players um, who are back from playing in college or Europe or anywhere overseas come back to the area to stay in shape. And it's a pretty competitive league. And then it was always kind of curious about it, but not so much the basketball part, more so the community aspect of it. Like, who are the individuals that go to this league? What do they look like? Are they having a good time? And so, what I was interested in is like making, meeting people, making portraits, um, giving kind of a sense of place for where this basketball court is. Because at the time, it was in the middle of a housing project. This actually does not exist anymore. They bulldozed this about 3 years ago, and they've like it's now condos.
Hmm.
So this is also kind of like a time capsule of this particular scene, and then also using kind of details and still lifes to show like evidence of like what this place looks like. And this is something that I would go to, if I didn't have an assignment, if I didn't have um, any kind of like admin, like paperwork, invoicing, expenses to do. I would go there in the afternoon, early evening, and just hang out for a few hours. And kind of cherry pick like the really good light that would come in during like 5, 6 o'clock.
Now, who were in the portraits? So these are just people that were there, part of the
Yeah.
party.
So it's a mixture of people attending, people who had family members, friends that were playing, um, some player like these guys, players. So it's kind of just like a cross section of individuals. So the idea was to kind of create this like catalog of kind of like who's who of like the individuals that make up this like community within like the gates.
Do you keep up with this community or the people that are part of it? Um,
I,
Moving.
so actually the gentleman that's up on the screen now, so Corey, Corey played professionally in Canada and now is back coaching um it is some sort of like minor league basketball team in like the Northeast. And I believe he just had a baby. He and his wife just had a baby. So some guys I'm like able to keep up with just through like Instagram. Um and like some I'll just kind of see when I'm out. But I with any project I try to keep in touch just because I'm curious and like um I want to know like how people are doing.
Mhm. I want to know the backstory about this, the name Hobo Chick.
They would never tell me. It's like one of those things where like I hung out there for about like 3 or 4 years, just kind of like actively photographing. And then got to a point where like the project had published, it had been shown in a gallery in like the neighborhood. And so there was kind of like like a period at the end of, the what I was like trying to say about um, the place and like the community. And then I was just kind of going just to like hang out. And, I would see the same people. And I think I would ask like Chick, like how he got his nickname and like wouldn't tell me. So always said it was like a long story. And I said, like, I got time. Like, I'm not going anywhere, obviously. But yeah, never got the full like scoop on his nickname.
There are condos there now, huh?
Yeah, it's condos, and then like they made a rec center um that's like kind of adjacent to where the courts are, but the whole area is like changed in the past yeah, like 5 6 years, like pretty significantly.
Gentrified.
Um yes and no, because there's still this so the neighborhood that it's in is called Anacostia,
Yeah,
and
sure.
it's you have to cross over the Anacostia River, and there just still seems to be this kind of like invisible wall between northeast northwest DC, where people still won't move across like the river. So like new transplants like won't look at Anacostia, even though it's kind of still the same distance from say like a neighborhood called like Tacoma, which is like very far up north.
Sure.
Like your commute time to downtown would still be the same. So
Right.
it hasn't really, I think, gentrified as much as like people thought it would, say like a U Street or 14th Street in DC.
Is there concern about that in that community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all over DC. I think the big concern is um the culture of the city will slowly be erased, and instead of like the local restaurants, the mom and pop shops, it'll be like a CVS, a Sweet Green, um, a Verizon store, and then like places that like don't necessarily serve all of the individuals living in the neighborhood.
Sure. Can you share some of your editorial work?
Yeah. Probably
And
just go.
while you're pulling that up, how long were you in newspapers for?
So I started as an intern in at the Roanoke Times in Roanoke, Virginia. I want to say that was 2006 or 2007.
Sure.
And then I was there. they kept extending it every 3 months, and then I was like, I kind of need health insurance.
Yeah.
That would
It
be
was,
nice.
it was, oh, wow. Yeah. It was still part of the landmark at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And ended
So,
up getting ended up getting hired full time, and then stuck around for another, I think I was there like in total probably like 3.5 years,
mhm.
including the internship that I had.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can find
Place to
like,
start.
yeah, it was like a really good foundation for um like how to shoot, how to photograph sports, how to interact with the community, how to essentially like each day like given like 2 to 3 assignments, and it's like okay, you have to like go figure this out and then get everything in before deadline. So it was a really um yeah, it was a really good way of like learning the types of photography that I connected with and the types of photography that I was not into. And
Yeah.
also just covering a community of that size. I really felt that like I got to know it, very well. So what I'm showing right now is I spent a day with Maryland's first black governor. His name is Wes Moore. And so this was kind of like a typical assignment that I would get where part of it is formal portraiture and the other part is reportage. So hanging out, like looking for an interesting moment. And this is kind of my day with the governor. We went to a kind of like it was a place where like they were passing out free groceries um, to a community in like Baltimore. And so this is like, him in the lower left, like kind of interacting with people. There are a few people that knew him because this was a neighborhood that he grew up in.
Hmm.
And then this is at a community center in Easton, Maryland, which is closer to like the coast. So completely different um, neighborhood. I think this is during a press interview. So I was kind of just like looking for, kind of like an interesting detail or something that's a little bit more um, based around like aesthetics to kind of break up like the flow of like, moments and like, very direct pictures. Yeah, as the governor, like interacting with like local media. And then also at the community center in Easton, saw an old friend. So it was like him, the two hugging. And then this is like kind of where it got interesting. We had kind of like finished this portion of this trip, and he was like, "Oh, the people across the street have Wes Moore signs in their yard. I'm gonna go say hello." So he just starts kind of knocking on doors, and then people start to come out, and they realize who he is, and so it was like a really like nice, unexpected moment.
Pretty spontaneous guy.
Yeah, spontaneous, a lot of like really, really positive energy. Went to an American Legion. The governor served in the military, so this was another stop that he wanted to make. Again, kind of like looking for like another, type of detail. This is a jacket on a chair. He sat down so that he could move around a little bit more freely.
Is he talking to a TV camera person off camera?
No, this is actually during during kind of like the like formal portrait time.
Okay.
Um, so I was like trying to like incorporate like the the place setting for service members, and then also have him in there too, and like the shadow.
Oh, wow.
Um, so I don't know, just like trying to think of like ways to kind of like push what like a portrait is. Um, and he was also kind of a fun guy too. Enjoyed being in front of the camera, enjoyed kind of the interaction and the back and forth. Noticed his socks. I was like, "Why are you wearing these socks?" um, and like, I don't know. He's a guy that like does not like meetings. Would prefer to like just kind of like get up and go, and get after it.
Yeah.
And then like wanted to go knock on more doors and say hello to people. In this neighborhood. So real interesting, real charismatic guy. And this is kind of a really good example of like the type of work that I'm getting.
Are you able to share who that was for?
That was for time.
Okay. Did they give you I missed that. Did they give you what kind of space did they give you for that?
I think it was, what was it? It was like 2 pages, like it was like a double page spread.
Nice.
To kind of like lead it off, and then a couple more inside. They wanted to try it for the cover, but that was the same week that like the Chat GPT story broke.
Yeah, their
Um
CEO.
yeah, this was like way, I think this was in like January, like a year ago.
Oh,
January or
okay.
February of a year ago, I think, when this came out.
Sure.
But yeah, it was one of those where I think we were all like, the editor and I were feeling good that it was like could be a cover. Um and then like that story broke, and it was like, well, Chat GPT is like more kind of a bigger story.
Yeah. Um, so going back, all right. So my line of questioning is many students in here, of course, being students, they're kind of planning their careers and what their career trajectory might look like. Um, so you went from working at a staff in print to being an independent photographer. What was that transition like?
Well, I like to say that I had a cup of coffee in Paris. So after I left the Roanoke Times, I went and worked as an assistant at a photo agency called Seven. It's like the Roman numeral seven.
Yeah.
A few like noteworthy like photojournalists of like this time period, kind of covering breaking news, social issues. So my thought in like going there was that I would learn how photos are marketed and sold. So kind of a crash course about like the business of like photography. And also I wanted to get away from like daily photography.
Mhm.
And like spend more time like looking at um the Seven archive, and
Mhm.
like kind of understand like, okay, like what is a successful image, how do images work together to tell a story, and what do I like, what don't I like. We're just kind of like figuring out all of these things, and also figuring out how I want my photography to look and what I want to focus on. So I did that um for about 8 months, 6 months. Yeah, 6 months. And then moved back to Virginia, and then, just kind of jumped back into working independently.
So what does it take to market yourself? And
Now,
we'll talk about F gatekeeping in a little bit, but what is it?
okay.
But what do you think is the most important part of marketing your work?
Well, so feel like you have to have the goods before you show them. And when I say that, I mean like you have to have um some type of like body of work. Whether that is a um photo story, like in-depth like project, a collection of portraits, a collection of still lifes. I would say like a group of images that demonstrate your visual approach, your style, that show how you see and interpret light, an area of focus. Um, so I'd say like once you have that and you've like put time into making that, then it's about looking for places, looking for people that can use that type of imagery. So I'm really only an expert on myself, so I feel confident talking about this. So a lot of my work revolves around sports lifestyle, sports fashion, kind of that. It sits in kind of that intersection right now. So I'll just kind of like go. I'm gonna share my screen again, or see if I can figure this out.
Sure.
Okay, so okay, so this is kind of like a very like mini version of like how do you take personal work or take your work to translate it to paid work. Okay, so this image, um at the moment I'm like working as kind of like a creative director for this like minor league soccer team called Virginia Dream.
Hmm.
And like right now it's kind of an interesting time with like how soccer jerseys are presented, how they're marketed, how they're launched. And it seems like a lot of these the imagery coming out feels like a fashion editorial. So the idea was to like find somebody locally who has like kind of a presence, put them in the jersey, find an interesting location, and make an interesting image. Um, and then again, same thing with like the jerseys, put it in an interesting place, use some light, use some color. Um, and all of this, like, it's going through the club's Instagram, it's going through my Instagram. Also being kind of aggressive and sending it to um, places that might work, like other soccer clubs, soccer based, uh, like Instagram accounts, websites, streetwear sites, streetwear Instagram, like all these kind of like mood board accounts. So the short version is that somebody from Major League Soccer saw this and was like, "Oh, this is super interesting what you guys are doing. We would like you to take that, same approach for Major League Soccer's the launch of their All-Star jersey. The game is being played in DC last year, so ended up getting off the work that I was doing like for this club that was like self-initiated, was able to kind of like leverage that for um this shoot with Major League Soccer. But the main thing that I want to stress is that taking the time to kind of figure out like what you like, what you don't like, what your area of focus is, how you want an image to look, how you want it to feel. And once you have that, once you feel really good about that, then I would say like start like um, sending people cold emails, start sharing it like publicly, like on Instagram, um, writing people directly. But the main thing is like putting the time to kind of figure out what you want your work to look like, feel like, and like be focused on.
Um, would you say that that was the advantage of starting out in a regular job that maybe wasn't a destination workplace?
And so like at Roanoke or
Yeah, at Roanoke, yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm noticing is a lot of aspiring independent photographers kind of want to graduate and pronounce themselves an independent photographer, and then hopefully things will come together. I Some of the advice that we get from other professionals who are independent photographers say that it might be a good idea to put in some time elsewhere first, and then kind of build up a war chest. And
yeah, so I would say like okay, so I think the idea of like moving to New York, moving to Los Angeles is like super romantic. Um but you're paying New York rent, you're paying Los Angeles rent, and then you're also paying like all the living expenses that like come with that. And you may have to take on like a part-time job or photograph um things that you're not too invested in, which is something that I certainly did when I first moved to DC. I photographed like pretty much anything, like a medical conference at a Marriott ballroom, weddings, like stuff that I was just not into. But I was like, okay, well, if I can like work on this thing for like a day or two, get paid, then my rent's taken care of, and then I can like kind of move back into the work that I want to do. Um, but I think there is something to be said about maybe living in a place where the type of work that you want to do, it's easier to get to, and the cost of living isn't as like insane. Because like ultimately, like once you've established like how you like to work, how you see, um, magazines or brands don't care where you live. What they care about is like, oh, we want this specific thing. You are the person that does that thing. We don't care where you live. We're just going to like either send you the stuff and you can do it in your own studio or send you to the place. So, and I think it takes a little longer. Um, but I think it's more sustainable to kind of uh develop your voice first, then like move to like a New York or a Los Angeles or Chicago.
so there's a breaking in challenge there. Um, this is a good segue to the website, F gatekeeping.
Yeah.
If you can feel free to use the F bomb, I just can't.
Okay, sure.
Um, but so tell me about what motivated that and what you were hoping to do with that particular website.
So as you can see, like we haven't really done much with it lately.
Mhm.
But the whole so I didn't go to a photo school. Carmen um and Emiliano, who are the colleagues who I also work with on that, did not attend a photo school either. And a lot of we were finding that a lot of the things that you learn, working independently, you just kind of like learn them by doing. Like no one really tells you like, oh, this is how you send an email, to an editor. This is what you put in the subject line. This is what you do when you ask for a meeting with a photo editor. Um, a lot of it was just kind of like you either had a friend that was very nice and like kind of like clued you in on what you're supposed to do, or you just kind of made the mistake and like learned from that mistake. So during the pandemic, um, yeah, I was getting a lot of photographers of color that were reaching out, asking like, hey, like Dove wants to license a photo that I took, but they're only offering me $200. Like, is this, can you help me? Is this the right like fee? It seems low. And I would be like, tell me a little bit more about like the project and what they're wanting. And then I was like, oh, okay, like this is like a full blown like ad. Like this is like does not sit well with me. This is not right. And in fact, it's kind of gross that a brand is trying to take advantage of um a photographer of color like during this time. So in order to try to help as many people as possible, we started the site to kind of give people a rundown of like, okay, here are some questions you can ask to try to get like a number out of people, just kind of like the broad topics of like how to work independently.
What do you think the roadblocks or the headwinds are now for independent photographers?
So I would
It's
say
a big.
getting the attention of an editor, of an art director, anybody who's in kind of a hiring position. Because right now, so in-person meetings are very, very difficult to get. Years ago, this it makes me sound like an old man, but like years ago, we would print something out, like either like a zine or like a book or like postcards or a box of prints, and then like we would send them to an editor or a photo director, um, because people were working in an office and it was easy to, and people liked receiving mail. Um, Now it's difficult to figure out if people are going into the office, or if they're working remotely, and then trying to ask somebody for an address, their home address, like that's just not happening.
Yeah.
And then email newsletters are kind of tough because everybody's inbox looks like nuts. And it's kind of the same thing with like cold emails. So the challenge is trying to like get like get someone's attention, or to get somebody to care to invest in like what it is that you're doing. Um and like right now I feel like there's like the only thing I can really control is the work that I put out and the quality of it, and like making sure it's like work that I'm excited about and work that like I feel strongly about. So I feel like if I'm making good work, if I'm if I keep sending it out, something will shake loose, in terms of like kind of the paid work. Um, but I also try to remember that like this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be like enjoyable. This is one of the first reasons I got into it. But yeah, I would say like right now that's kind of the biggest challenge is trying to like kind of cut through that like noise.
Okay. Is there anything, we've only just got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that anybody here wanted to ask? Just,
Said sweet, I saved my portfolio. And thanks for helping.
okay. Yeah. I get texts sometimes. And my Apple Watch gets very excited about them. So yeah, I mean, that rings true. You work on your work and you work to make your work unique. And I definitely see that, especially in your pictures of the Maryland governor, which frankly reminded me something that I used to see in the city paper in terms of the style. I used to be a staff member of the alternative newspaper, the city paper in Baltimore and Washington. And your style, I think, kind of emulated the kind of alternative photojournalistic, for lack of a better word, voice, your aesthetic, I think, kind of brought back those memories. So again, you have to offer something unique in terms of your voice as a photographer and your creative vision. And that's so yeah, at the end of the day, it just comes full circle, and it's just about working on your work.
Yeah, and I would say like I would also add that like it's supposed to take time. Like if anybody has it, nobody has it figured out like immediately. Like I feel like it took me, I don't know, maybe like 20 2015, 2016 to where I figured out like okay, like I kind of know what I'm doing now, or like I can see like that I like photographing in a particular type of light, and if that light isn't there, this is the way that I'm going to end up creating it with like artificial light. And I like these colors, and I like, to photograph from this distance. So um it was like taking a lot. This is like so like kind of like a meathead way of explaining this, but like got take a lot of photos, and you got to look at a lot of photos, and then you figure out like which photos that like resonate with you and that like feel like yours. I feel like when I first started, especially in newspapers, I was making other people's pictures. And I think a lot of my early references were like Alex Webb, um, and like Sam Abel, and I think probably like any Danish photographer, because it was all about kind of like put something in the foreground, have something maybe interesting in the midground, and then something in the background.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of like layers happening. Which like was interesting and like helped me organize like a frame, but like I don't know, like I was definitely just like ripping off these other photographers
Well,
early in
it's
my career.
emulation.
Yeah.
Everybody. Okay. Well, listen, we've run out of time, but I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the students appreciate it.
Well, cool.
So,
Thanks, guys.
All right, I'll we can we can't see you, so we'll just be able to hear you.
Cool.
Okay,
Thanks.
awesome. I'll talk to you later. I'll be in DC probably over the summer. Are you on the Virginia side of the Potomac, or are you
No, I'm
in the district?
I'm right smack in the middle of DC.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we'll try to catch up when I'm there a
Cool.
little bit this summer. My son lives in Reston, so
Sounds good.
all right. All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.